Hi friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my August wrap up. So, besties, I had one of the best reading months of the year / my entire life. I read 11 books and almost all of them are new favorites of mine. I am so happy with the way that my reading went this month and I'm really excited to talk about all of these amazing books. Even the books that weren't as great, I literally don't even care about because I have so many new books to obsess over, new books to make my personality, and of course new books to recommend to you all. So I'm really excited to talk about these books today, so let's get straight into it. The very first book that I read in the month of August was Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J Maas. This is the finale to the Throne of Glass series, and this was my third time reading this book. I finally finished my third reread of the Throne of Glass series, you guys. I started my third Throne of Glass reread in May of 2023, and I finished it in August of 2024. Took me a while to get there, but I just kept putting Kingdom of Ash off because while I do love this book, while I do think this is one of the best books that Sarah Janet has ever written, it's a gut punch. It's very emotional and it's also incredibly long. It's almost 1,000 pages. So I just kept putting it off, adding it to TBRs, never picking it up, but August was finally the month for me to finish it. So I am so happy that I did. This book is of course getting a 5-star rating from me, and I literally cannot wait to read the Throne of Glass series again for a 4th time. I'm probably gonna do that next year. So this was a great way to start the month with a beloved 5-star reread. The next book that I read in the month of August was Storm of Secrets and Sorrow by Melissa K. Rorick. This is book 2 in the Legacy series, which is a dark fantasy romance series. In this series, we are following Tessa and Theon. We're also following a few other characters like Axel, who is Theon's brother, and Luca, who is Theon's guardian. But in this world, Tessa and Theon have a source and legacy relationship. Tessa is a fae, and in this world, fae were created to be sources of power, sources of strength for the legacy, and the legacy are kind of like deluxe fae is what I like to call them. So Tessa does end up getting bonded to Theon, and she's very unhappy about this. She never wanted to be a source to begin with, and we follow their very tumultuous relationship as they try to navigate this new dynamic between them, and also a lot of like political and familial scheming going on, and a lot more bigger problems occur in the background involving the gods and all of the different kingdoms. So book 2 was just as good as book 1. I am also giving this book a 5-star rating. I am in love with this series. I think this is going to be one of my new all-time favorite series whenever it is finished, and I think that this book was so strong. We got to see a lot of romance development, we got to see a ton of plot development, and we got a lot of questions answered that we had in book 1, while also ushering in a ton more questions in book 2. So I am very eagerly awaiting the 3rd book in this series, which is coming out on Halloween. I will literally be picking that book up right away, but I cannot recommend the series enough. Definitely check the trigger warnings before you pick this up though. It is definitely a darker fantasy romance, but I think it is so strong and so well written, and truly just one of my new all-time faves. In the month of August, I also read Nectar of the Wicked by Ella Fields. So in this book, we are following a changeling who ends up agreeing to get married to a wicked fae king, and for her hand in marriage, this wicked fae king does agree to help her look into her past. She doesn't know too much about herself, she doesn't know too much about her lineage, so the two of them kind of strike up this bond and agreement, and she gets whisked off to his fae castle and lives in his fae lands while she tries to discover more about herself. This book unfortunately did not end up being much of a hit for me. I'm gonna give this book a 3-star rating. A few of the issues that I had with this book are, number 1, I don't feel like there was a ton of romantic development. I feel like we had a lot of lust. This is a very spice-forward book, which is fine, but I need that romantic development to go along with it. I need that tension, and I just don't really feel like we got a lot of that in this book. I also feel like the characters in this book were not particularly interesting. I didn't really feel very connected to our female main character or our male main character. They just didn't really do a lot for me, and this book didn't really make me feel too much. So it was a perfectly fine read, not a book that I like regret reading, but just an average 3-star read. The next book that I read in the month of August was Quicksilver by Callie Hart. So this is an adult fantasy romance, and it's the first book in a new series by Callie Hart. This is her first foray into fantasy. I'm pretty sure she's primarily a contemporary romance author, but I think she did an absolutely phenomenal job with her first step into fantasy. This is easily one of my best books of the year. Quicksilver is so good, you guys. Like, the hype is so real, and I'm so happy that I read this book. It has really just left such an impression on me. I continue to think about about it, and I'm just absolutely obsessed with it. If you don't know what this book is about, we follow Saris, and Saris lives a very tough life in the kingdom that she is in. She lives on the street. She's just trying to take care of her and her brother. She is a bit of a thief. She actually ends up stealing from the queen's guards, and conflict that ensues from that ends up with Saris kind of like opening a rift into the Fae realm, where she meets this very broody and formidable Fae warrior and gets involved in this very great war that she had no idea about, no idea what was going on and what her role in it will be. I was absolutely obsessed with the characters in this book. I love our male main character, Kingfisher. He is just like everything to me. Our female main character is wonderful. She's very strong. She's a little rough around the edges. She's very sarcastic, and she was just such a fun character to follow in this book. The romance is amazing. It is so well done. The spice was like a lot more spicy than I thought it was gonna be, honestly, but I was here for it. We have amazing animal sidekicks, we have fire sprites, we have vampires and fae, and an amazing lore and world building. This book just really has everything for me. I think it's so good and so perfect. I cannot wait for book 2. I don't know when we're going to get it. I haven't heard anything about the second book. I know that at the end of this book, it says book 2 coming out in October of 2024. I haven't seen anything about that, so I don't think that's gonna be coming soon. But whenever book 2 does come out, that will be like my top priority, my most anticipated read, because Quicksilver was just so fantastic and I cannot wait to continue the series. The next book that I read in the month of August was These Twisted Bonds by Lexi Ryan. This is the second book and the finale of the These Hollow Vows duology. So I read These Hollow Vows like 2 years ago, so it's been quite a while, but I was just randomly kind of perusing the Libby app one day and I saw that my library did have an available copy of the These Twisted Bonds audiobook. So I was like, you know what? Why don't I just pick that up, finish off the duology? I just bought Lexi Ryan's newest release, and that book does exist in this universe. So that kind of prompted me to think about this book and want to read it. So I finished off this duology, and overall I enjoyed myself. I feel like this book is kind of like the perfect 3-star read for me. I don't think it is bad. I don't think it is fantastic. It is what it is, and there were definitely some enjoyable moments throughout the book, but it's not a book that makes me feel a whole lot. It's not a book that once I finished I thought too much about, but I am happy that I did finish off this duology. The first book definitely has hints of like the Cruel Prince and that world. Our main character is a human and her sister ends up getting kidnapped by the Fae, and she goes to try and find her sister, and chaos ensues, as it does when a human enters a Fae realm, as we all know from the millions of fantasy romance books that feature that storyline. But I'm not saying I hate that. I absolutely love it. Some are better than others, and I think that this duology is just like a perfectly average depiction of that. It is a YA fantasy romance though. There are some YA fantasies that as an adult I fully enjoy, even with their YA aspects. I know what I'm getting into when I pick those books up, so I have certain expectations, but I still very much enjoy them. Like, I really enjoy Once Upon a Broken Heart. I really enjoy the Folk of the Air series. This is a YA fantasy romance that I think if I was younger, I would enjoy more. And this is like a really solid YA fantasy romance if you're like 17 or something like that. But definitely not bad, but not a book that has left a huge impression on me, so it's gonna be a 3-star read. Okay, so actually speaking of YA fantasies that I love and are fantastic, and I don't even care that they're YA because the writing is so good and the book itself was just amazing. This Woven Kingdom by Tahereh Mafi. This book is so good. This book is incredible. I gave it a 4-star on Goodreads. I'm thinking that I need to up that to a 4.5 star. It's not quite a 5-star, which I will get into in a little bit, but this book doesn't even really feel YA, honestly. I think it's YA because the characters are not fully adults, and there aren't really a ton of like adult themes in the book, but the writing is so beautiful and compelling, and I think reaches a level of almost feeling like it's a new adult fantasy. I read this book in like one day, and it was an amazing experience. The world building is so rich. The characters are just so amazing and compelling, and the story is just like endlessly entertaining. We have a really good balance of a character-driven story with an interesting plot, and just like the imagery in this book is so good. I truly could go on about this, but if you don't know what this Woven Kingdom is about, this is a Persian fantasy, and our female main character, she is a long-lost heir to the throne in hiding. She is living and working as a servant. Our male main character is a prince, and he is an heir to his own throne. Their paths converge, and he becomes very suspicious of her because she seems to be more than what she is letting on. That is truly all you need to know to go in, because the storytelling here is so well done, and the way that the story just kind of like slowly unfolds is so good. And the romance. Okay, like I said, this is a YA fantasy, and I wouldn't even consider it a fantasy romance, but the romance subplot that we have in here I think is so well done, and the way that our male main character just speaks about the female main character I think is really beautiful, and he is so into her right away without it feeling like insta love. And I think it's a very like romantic way that he speaks about her. He's just so taken with her right away, and I loved their dynamic. I do believe that this is going to be a love triangle though, so we'll kind of see how things go throughout the series, but I think that this was such a strong start to the series. I immediately went out and got books 2 and 3, and I'm so excited to continue on. Really, the only reason that this did not get a 5-star for me is the ending felt a little bit confusing for me. I wasn't quite able to follow some of like the action and battle scenes that were happening and some of the kind of motives of our characters. So just the way that that was described, I think took me out of the story a little bit, and I wasn't as engaged as I was for like the first 80% of the book, but I still enjoyed it and I'm still super excited to see what happens. This book does have a very interesting cliffhanger, so while, you know, kind of getting to that cliffhanger was a little bit clunky for me, I'm still really excited about the prospect of book 2 and just to see where the series goes. All right, less exciting. The Hunted Heir by Holly Renee. I was so disappointed by this book, you guys, and I'm so sad because I truly loved The Veiled Kingdom. I thought it was so much fun. It's a new adult fantasy romance. We follow a princess who runs away from the castle that she lives in from her father, the king. She's living on the streets. She wants nothing to do with royal life. She ends up getting kidnapped by the rebellion group who is against her father and royalty as a whole. She keeps her anonymity. She doesn't want them to know that she's the princess, and she ends up falling for the son of the leader of the rebellion, which obviously is, you know, a bit of a conflict of interest. The first book was really fun, like not a book that's gonna change your life, but really just a great, spicy, hate to love fanro. I was very much looking forward to book 2 because the first book ended in a crazy way, and I wanted to see how we were going to patch things up, how we were going to take the plot of this story in an interesting direction, and that just did not happen, in my opinion, in book 2. Number one, I felt that almost nothing happened in this book. I was very bored by the plot. I just felt like we were really stuck in our characters' heads of just kind of going over the events of book 1 and feeling very conflicted, not knowing what to do. I feel like the story just felt so stagnant in this book. I also feel like, and I didn't touch on this in my vlog for this book, if you want to see more thoughts on this book, I did vlog it, but something I forgot to talk about in the vlog, I feel that more groveling really needed to happen in this book, more of an apology, more of making it up to our character for the actions of another character, and I really don't think that we got that. I really think that we needed way more to make this romance feel convincing and genuine, and I really wanted more groveling and more of an apology. I feel like we basically got nothing. And then the ending of this book was very anticlimactic. I mean, you can see it coming from a mile away, and I think just the way that we got there just felt very surface level. There wasn't a lot of detail to it. I feel like the book kind of just ended, and I literally, when I finished this book, didn't think it was the end because I was reading it on my Kindle, so I didn't know how many pages I had left. And I was like, okay, you know, end this chapter, I'm gonna keep going, and then it's just the end screen and the book is over. So I am very disappointed by this. I think that the first book was much, much better. I am still going to read the third book whenever it comes out just because I want to finish the trilogy. I am mildly curious enough to know how our characters end up and how we're going to end the story. But this second book was a major dud, very disappointing, definitely my worst book of the month, but we have more amazing books to talk about, so let's get to those. The next book that I read in the month of August was A Touch of Gold and Madness by K.L. DeVore. This is a fantasy romance, but it's more like post-apocalyptic, almost dystopian fantasy romance, and this book is so good. So amazing, very different from a lot of the books that I read. It doesn't fall into that typical fantasy romance category, but has a lot of those similar tropes and feeling, and I am just obsessed with this book, with this world. The next book that is coming out in this world is actually a prequel to A Touch of Gold and Madness. I cannot wait to get my hands on that. This is another book that I've seen just so many people talking about, so I knew I wanted to pick it up right away. A Touch of Gold and Madness takes place in a kind of like post-apocalyptic slash modern day Atlanta. So it does take place in our world in, I think, 2025, I believe is the year that this book starts. But prior to the events of this book, we had two magical species called kinetics and elementals, and they lived amongst the humans. However, conflict occurred between them, which ended up decimating the land, ruining all the peace that they had. Most of the humans went and started living underground, and now the kinetics and the elementals are still kind of warring above ground and have fully taken over. So our female main character, she is the princess of the kinetics, and our male main character is kind of the prince of the elementals. He's got a whole situation going on, which I won't get into because spoilers, but they're sort of these similar two sides of the same coin, opposing characters. And we find out that our female main character has been assigned to kill our male main character, but she is not successful in that assassination. And then we find out that there is a hit on our female main character as well. So she ends up running away, ends up running into our male main character. The two of them kind of begrudgingly decide to use one another in order to achieve both of their goals, and they end up falling for each other. That description though is truly just like scratching the surface. There is so much much to this world. There's so much going on. There's so much amazing world building and lore and so many cool characters. The way that this author describes all of the magical powers and how this world works, I think is really detailed and incredible. And this book was so much fun. And the ending was like, I don't even know. I don't have words. I truly don't have words. The best way that I can describe it, and I also said this in the vlog that I did for this book, is it like fully recontextualizes everything that we read in this book. When you get to the ending, particularly like the last chapter, you're just like, wait, okay, so everything that I thought I knew is not what it is, maybe, kind of, but it is a little bit. Like, I was fully blown away by the end of this book and I just loved it. I cannot wait for the prequel and the next book in this series as well, whenever that comes out. I think this is gonna be one of my new absolute favorites. So I really loved it. I gave it a 4.5-star rating, and this is once again a dark fantasy romance, so definitely check trigger warnings if you are interested in picking it up. The next book that I read in the month of August was actually an arc of Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling. This book is coming out on September 17th, and I actually read the indie version of this book last year and I loved it. It was one of my best books of 2023, and I feel very fortunate to have received an arc of this book as well to read the traditionally published version. This book follows Elowen, who is a lost princess. When she was born, she was bonded to 5 dragons, but her father, the king, ended up seeing this as a huge threat and tried to break the bond between her and her dragons. He was not successful in this though, so in order to keep Elowen away from her dragons and keep any power between them from strengthening, he kept Elowen down in his dungeons for many years. She was able to escape though and started her own kind of secret kingdom that nobody really knows about and has been living out her days in hiding. However, when she meets Commander Caden Velis, who is the commander of another nearby kingdom, the two of them strike up a reluctant allyship where Caden wants to help Elowen get her dragons back, and in exchange, Elowen and her dragons will help Caden in battling her father's kingdom in war. This book was another very easy 5 stars for me. I loved the original version, and I think that this version was just as fantastic. I love the found family in this book. That is like the biggest strength for me. I think that the characters are so much fun. There's amazing banter in this book. Caden and Elowen have so much chemistry, so much romantic tension, and the plot of this book was super fun. The changes that were made to this book, I think, just only enhanced the reading experience, and I just had such a good time with this book. I can't wait to get my hands on a physical copy in September, and I just had so much fun revisiting this story again. All right, besties, and the last 2 books that I read in the month of August were Gild and Glint, which are the first 2 books in the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy. So I am actually reading the entire Plated Prisoner series. I'm currently on Gleam. I don't know if I'll finish it before the month of August. I'm like 40% of the way through. It's going wonderfully, by the way. But I am going to be doing a Plated Prisoner series reading vlog, so I'm going to keep my thoughts short on these books. But just for a little bit of background, I have read Gild, Glint, and Gleam before. I read them over 2 years ago, and I enjoyed them. I think I gave them mostly like 3 and 4-star ratings, but I never continued on with the series. I didn't really feel very motivated to, and I kind of thought like maybe I'll never pick up that series again. It just wasn't really on my radar. But at the end of the year last year, I asked my Instagram followers, what is a series that you would like to see me read in a reading vlog? And the overwhelming majority of you said the Plated Prisoner series. So I was like, okay, I need to give this series another shot because so many of my followers absolutely love it, and I am so happy that so many of you suggested the series for me to read because I've been really enjoying the series so far. Upon reread, I'm discovering a lot of things that I just don't remember or didn't catch from the first time I read these books, and I'm connecting to the characters a lot more. I think Raven Kennedy's writing is really great, and I'm so excited about the future books in the series. I have not read Glow or Gold, and then of course Goldfinch isn't out yet, so I really can't wait to get to those books and see how the series continues on. But revisiting this series has been so wonderful, and I feel like it's honestly been just a brand new experience this time around, and I've just really enjoyed my time with these books. I gave both of these books 4.5-star ratings. This is a dark fantasy romance. It is a King Midas retelling, but once again, check the trigger warnings because particularly the first book, Gild, just have some very graphic content, so definitely look into the trigger warnings before you pick this book up if you are interested. But I think these first 2 books are pretty strong, and I've heard that the later books in the series are even better, so I'm really looking forward to continuing on with it and seeing what I think. All right, friends, so that is going to be it for my August wrap-up. I would love to know what was the best book that you read in the month of August, or if you wanted to let me know that you made it to this point in the video, you can go ahead and leave the crown emoji because I feel like I read so many fantasies focusing on royalty this month. Please make sure that you're following me on Instagram and Goodreads. They are always linked down below. I really appreciate that you watched this video. I hope that you're having a fantastic day. I love you all so much, and I will catch you guys in the next one.